Welcome to Frontlines. We welcome our viewers from across the United States and Canada, from Europe and the Middle East, from South America and Australia, and of course from Armenia and Artsakh. Azerbaijan has blockaded the only road connecting Artsakh to Armenia now for 44 days. A grave humanitarian crisis of historic proportions is unfolding. The 120,000 residents of Artsakh remain completely trapped. In sub-zero winter conditions, they are deprived of food, medication, nourishment for children, heating gas, fuel, electricity, even sometimes internet. Artsakh is left isolated. Azerbaijan is intentionally engineering a humanitarian catastrophe to force violent subjugation or outright ethnic cleansing. 30,000 children frozen in darkness, many still separated from mothers. 9,000 disabled people deprived of basic human needs, hundreds in hospitals and ICUs unable to receive life-saving surgeries and treatments. Schools closed, shelves bare, flour and sugar now rationed, entire families, the elderly, the young, lives disrupted unthinkably. This is what ethnic cleansing looks like up close, a sequence of sadistic orchestrated steps. It is a policy that Azerbaijan has pursued relentlessly for decades. The pogroms and massacres of Armenians in Baku, Sumgait, Kirovabad, and other cities. Operation Ring in the spring of '91, where Azerbaijan attempted to encircle and then strangled the entire Armenian population of Artsakh. Our Artsakh, the very heart of the Armenian national resurgence, the very core of our national struggle for our Armenian dignity, stands teetering before an abyss. And whether Yerevan wants to face this reality or not, where Artsakh goes, the fate of Armenia will soon follow. As many of you know, Garo and I witnessed the realities in Sunik just a few months ago during our fact-finding mission with Arman Tatoyan. It's obvious to anyone who bothers to look. Remember, Azerbaijani soldiers carry with them maps of what they call Western Azerbaijan that includes Yerevan itself. And make no mistake, what happens in Artsakh matters for the entire Armenian nation, for the future of the Armenian people. And so this nation must make a stand. And Artsakh is making that stand for us all again. It has proclaimed that it will stand for self-determination, that it will not succumb to subjugation, that it will not accept any status within Azerbaijan, and that its status will be determined by its own voice. Think about the sheer strength of that call echoing from dark, cold mountains surrounded by Azerbaijani forces. A nation standing amidst unspeakable torment, relentless torture, and the gravest of inhumanities for the right to live in one's own homeland, in one's own country, in one's own home. For decades, and now for 44 days, Azerbaijan has tried to crush Artsakh's spirit, its purpose, its people, and its dignity. It has failed. Do not ever underestimate what the Artsakh stand means for the survival and dignity of the Armenian people. This is an epic moment in the history of our people. It is our defense of Van, it is our Musadagh, it is our Sardarabad. And with that, I would like to ask Garo to please introduce today our special guest.
Thank you, Karnig. Thank you indeed. Parior sireli հայրենագիցներ, համայն սպյուրքի մեջ, Հայաստանի մեջ եւ Artsakhian աշխարհի մեջ. Good day, dear compatriots in the entire diaspora, in Armenia and in Artsakh. And good day to all of you, civil rights and human rights advocates who follow us on Frontlines, who care about humanity and the right of self-determination of people to live in dignity. We are extremely honored and pleased to have the opportunity to welcome the State Minister of the Republic of Artsakh, Mr. Ruben Vardanyan, to Frontlines this morning in Stepanakert, capital of Artsakh, and this evening in the United States and other times elsewhere. Ruben Vardanyan is someone who is in Artsakh, having been born in Armenia, having been successful as a businessman for going back over 30 years. And say what you will for those who are eager and easy to comment, criticize, and opine I, for one, bow for the commitment of a gentleman who decided to lift himself up and go somewhere and stand for the right of the self-determination of the people of the Republic of Artsakh, and I'm honored to have him as our guest. Mr. Vardanyan, welcome to Frontlines.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. State Minister, maybe that's a great place to start, kind of where Garo ended there. You upended your life and moved to Stepanakert. If you would, could you please explain some of your motivations and your purpose in doing so?
First of all, I want to welcome everyone and say thank you for Garo and Karnig for organizing this opportunity for me to present the situation in Artsakh, which I believe is very important. What you will get is information from first hand. It's a very important question, I think, for not only for me, but for many of us. We are living in a very difficult time in the world, not only in Artsakh. I think the humanitarian crisis in many places, the smell of Third World War is coming, and people really concerned about the future. We lost the trust to the many things, including the basic values. I don't want to go further, but it's a really very challenging time. And it's a privilege when you have your own homeland. It's a privilege when you feel you belong to someone. I think to not be alone, because many people feel today that they're all alone, what's happening around us. And pandemic, by the way, creates more pressure to everyone feel alone and don't know what to do. I'm Armenian. I was born in Armenia, but I left Armenia when I was 17 years old, and I have a Russian wife. I have 4 kids. And I'm quite successful in my career. I have a lot of friends, and I was a board member of around 58 companies and organizations around the world. And when in 2020, the 44-day war started, I occasionally was in the day, arrived in the airport from Moscow to Yerevan, and I came in the morning to Stepanakert, exactly the day when the war started. And I felt horrible, despite everything we've all been doing many years to help Artsakh. And I was privileged to be in Artsakh 20 years before. And I did a lot of projects. I was very proud, and I said, okay, I'm doing my duty. I made some philanthropic support. I realized this is the time when everyone needs to make your own choice about how much I care about, not only about my own family, my own life, but about something that's very difficult to determine. What is your homeland? Artsakh is not my homeland, and why I'm Armenian? I have a Georgian blood, I have a Russian wife, and what's the point to feel so bad about some land? For many people said, "Oh, it's okay. It's one more land." I'm privileged to feel the love to my nation, to my homeland, and I'm privileged to feel obliged to say, "Okay, if I am successful, if I am, I have a competence, I have a reputation, I have resources, and my country." And my country doesn't mean to be a place where I was born, by a country which I believe is very critical for my roots, in a trouble. How much I used to care, how much I used to be responsible for this. And I said, you know what, it's at the time to make a decision or about your personal commitment and your personal priorities. And I had a very difficult discussion with my wife and my 4 kids about this in the summer. I said, you know, I felt in 2020, after the war was over, we lost, and I all these 2 years felt horrible. I couldn't do more for Artsakh. I said I need to go there because I felt that 3 reasons why I need to go there. First, that Artsakh is not belong only to Artsakh. People who live in Artsakh, it belongs to the Armenian nation. It's really people in Artsakh need to feel that we are not alone, but we are really supported by people around the world, both Armenian and non-Armenian people also, who felt this is very important for them to be defending Artsakh. The second, I said, if God give you more compared to other people, it means you also need to give back more. And this is an important philosophy which I, with my wife, I share. We made a decision many, many years ago. We will give back 90% of our wealth to the philanthropy because we said our kids can get good education and some real estate, but they don't need to get money from us. They need to get better world. So if I'm not doing world better in this situation, what else needs to be happening? And the third, I felt, it's when you're saying I love Armenia or I love something, but you're not doing anything, it means you're cheating. You're cheating yourself, and I don't want to cheat myself. I said, for some reason, I said it's important. If I'm not doing this decision now, it means I'm cheating. I don't want to cheat myself. I'm sorry to give you a long answer, but it was a very important question you asked.
Minister Vardanyan, I have so many questions, but I'll start with one. The last 24 hours, we have heard reports, about the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, having had a telephone conversation with President of Azerbaijan, urging him to reopen the corridor to commercial traffic, as I understood it. And during the telephone call, Secretary Blinken reportedly, raised human rights concerns in Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, we have also heard reports about Aliyev stating that, look, I just hear these international leaders simply out of political courtesy. My question to you is, what is your sense? Do you think that a dictatorial president such as Aliyev takes also the calls of not only Secretary of State Antony Blinken of the US, but also the president of Russia, Mr. Putin, out of political courtesy, and is not at all concerned with any pushback or repercussions from Washington or Moscow? And in your opinion, finally, do you think that there are certain red lines that the European Union, the United States, or the Russian Federation have that President Aliyev is getting close to crossing, if you will? All of it, of course, as an Armenian, to me, only meaning one thing. How is that going to inure to the benefit of the Armenians of the Republic of Artsakh? What are your thoughts about this?
First of all, I want to say, I'm just sorry as the Minister of Defense. One second, I need to answer. Sorry, it's every morning we have a call with the Minister of Defense to check the situation. It's a 7, usually 30. But anyway, coming to your question, sorry. First of all, let's, I think you asked many questions. Let's go back to the main point. I think we need to talk not about the physical blockade. We don't have a physical blockade. It's a political blockade that Aliyev tried to do it last 2 years, saying this problem not exist. It's our internal problem. I don't see any. He said, he said, it's my internal problem. I don't care about what the world thinking. I will do that I wanted. And Armenians who live in Artsakh belong to Azerbaijan, and it's my own internal problem to do whatever I want. Second, he said it's part of our state, and there's no discussion with the people who live in Artsakh about anything about their future. I don't see them as like state, or I don't recognize them like counterpart. The third, he said, nobody cares about what's in Artsakh. Nobody cares, and this is, he thought he will do easily whatever he wanted. I think the State Secretary Blinken message, the President Macron called Aliyev a couple, I think, weeks ago. Lavrov was very tough discussion with Bayramov. He sent a clear message, but despite all the problems and all the conflict between the big countries like US, Russia, France, nobody will give up the Artsakh just easily, how Ali thought. Second, I think the voice of Artsakh people was heard because it's clearly was sent message to the world saying, guys, are you sure you can ignore and be indifferent about the situation when the people living in our own homeland, we have thousands of years, and we have like chemistries of our parents and grandparents, and we have our religion, monasteries, and many other cultural heritages. Just will be ignored, and you will stay silent when everything will be destroyed because somebody decided that this belongs to them. And I think it was good to the leaders of the countries who really have a lot of different problems. And look, let's be honest, 120,000 people is a big number for all of us. Each life is important. But look what's happening in Syria or in Yemen or in Ukraine or many other places. And you say, who cares about? Now we become so cynical and so pragmatic and so real politics. Unfortunately, creates some. It creates the wrong environment where we live, the wrong ways to understand what this is important of each of personal life is so important. But thanks God, because of the Artsakh people position, because we really said it will not happen the way how you want it. It's not your only decision; it's also our decision. And our decision is very clear. And this was confirmed many times. Look, in October 30th, in December 25, we had a demonstration of 50,000 people went in the square of Artsakh, Stepanakert. They said, we understand the risk, we understand the problem, but we'll make the one only choice, decision. We will stay independent. We are not part of Azerbaijan. And I think the message to the world sent was very clear. How we can become part of the state, whereas their own people have no human rights, no human value. Their own people have no position or no rights to raise their voice. They don't know democracy. And it's not a question only what we are fighting between two different nationalities or two different religions. It's a war where we're fighting between democratic country and autocratic countries. So I think the reaction for the world, which is quite unique, because I think it's only one conflict, whereas France, US, and Russia have a similar view as saying the story is not over. Mm-hmm. And it was very good for all of us to feel this is important for the world, important for people who maybe care about many other things, because it's confirmed that the basic human values is critical for the leaders of the countries today.
Minister Vardanyan, I'm gonna turn it over to Karnig with the following remark. Toivio Klar, the EU Special Representative for the South Caucasus, just arrived in Armenia, and I'm going to turn it over to Karnig because Karnig has had interactions with Toivio Klar recently, particularly about the Artsakh issue. And I'm curious, given official Yerevan on one end suggesting that Artsakh should speak for Artsakh, we will support whatever Artsakh decides. I'm curious if you, Mr. Minister, have been given an opportunity to speak to any of these cast of characters, if you will, from Mr. Clark to Secretary Blinken, President Macron, or others. Karnig, what do you have to say?
I think your question is very well placed, Garo, because in my interactions, I've made it very clear that a direct line with Stepanakert, they should, if they want to find information from the ground, they should contact the government in Stepanakert. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that and ask Mr. Vardanyan, is that a view you share? Have any of these organizations reached out to you? When we speak of self-determination, when we speak of democratic rights, when we speak of the voice of the people in this case has a government. It has a government that's freely elected. And it is very, it seems to be an about face when we have, especially Western European countries and the West generally, speaking of these liberal rights of democracy, self-determination. At the same time, the voice of the people of Artsakh is not being called upon. Tell us a little bit about that. Have you had any interactions? Have you sought any interactions? What are your hopes in that regard?
You're absolutely right. It's one of the key problems with the international community, international organizations, and the people who is responsible for finding a solution of indifferent conflict. They also, unfortunately, not fully realize that they cannot ignore Artsakh and just talk to Armenian government or to talk with Azerbaijan or talk with Russia, peacekeeper, I don't know what they may be talking, but ignoring the freely elected president and parliament and the government was appointed by president. Unfortunately, the content is very limited, and unfortunately, the only way we could present our voice is use the public media, which I'm pleased to say was quite a lot of interest to both in Artsakh and not only in Armenia, but in Russia, in France, in the United States. Yesterday, I had a very tough talk and hard talk with the BBC, and it was one of the top TV programs in England. Overall, we, of course, work very close with the Armenian government and Armenian lawyers, try to present our case in different courts also. In the end of the response, it will be in international court, the discussion about this blockade. We was Security Council in the UN will discuss the issue. So in one hand, I can say we had a chance to raise our voice despite of cautiousness of the European or American or Russian diplomats, but it's continue quite difficult to get access and get direct contact with people who can really make decisions, and it's important for us, of course. In the UK, your help and other people's help will be very important for us.
If I can follow up real quickly, Mr. Minister, I have noticed, and one of our viewers also has commented about this, that there's been a recent change in the last, I would say, 1 week or 2 weeks of the international press becoming more and more interested about what is happening in Artsakh, as you were mentioning just a moment ago. Why do you think that is? And I'm going to break it in 2 parts. One, why do you think that is? Why the change, after 30 days of blockade and not at 20 days or 10 days of blockade? And then the second thing is, what can those interested in issues of self-determination, human rights, or the Armenian struggle in this region, what can they do to help further direct attention to what is happening in Artsakh today?
I believe our position is help international community to realize this is not the joke. It's a serious situation, and people who made the choice to stay and strong in our position to determine ourselves, our future, is ready to suffer and ready to get really very bad conditions. You don't realize this. We don't have gas and electricity. It's quite cold here, and it's last already 45 days. There's no many foods and medicaments, and no fuel. People using way walk, and again, it's a winter. I think the international community and the international press realize this is something more serious. It's not just 1 or 2 days reaction for something. So I say our strong position is help to raise more interest. Second, I think information about what's happening every day, the Red Cross, the other international organizations who got information from us, realize they cannot ignore. We cannot just ignore what's happening in Artsakh. And I think it's most important that we are totally pressing and providing this information to them. It's create more and more warning that they need to react, because humanitarian catastrophe is happening here, one way or another. It will create some pressure for the people around the world. People say, "Why are you not doing nothing? Why?" And ordinary people say, "What's your whole declaration about everything that you said, being leaders of the countries, and what you're doing is not matching." That's why I think is the second point. The third point, I'll say it's unfortunately I don't know who is the advisor of Aliyev government. Why doing very smart? They started December 12th. It's a Christmas. It's a New Year. People busy with their own private events, and I think in January became more working days, and people realized, no, it's not. The story is not over. Yeah. So I say 3 points.
Mr. Vardanyan, here's a question that seems to come up often among some people. It's widely believed that nothing moves in Artsakh, in fact, in the entire region, without a nod from Moscow or Russia. How do you react to that comment? Is that the case? And if so, where do we go with the current blockade? Don't you think that Russia perhaps has levers at its disposal that can be utilized, despite the fact that people say, well, Russia's busy, with Ukraine and everything else? What do you think? Is it not accurate to suggest that nothing really happens in the region without Russia's nod, if not a wink?
I'm not a good specialist about geopolitics, but in my view, it's at least 3 or maybe 4 big players who really define what's happening in our region. You mentioned Russia, absolutely. And the East Bay.
I want to interrupt you and say, let's talk about the couple of other players. Azerbaijan being another one, and Armenia being one, having been at war with Azerbaijan. But we're not. I'm talking about the local players, not the international big guns. Keep in mind whether or not Russia does have a nod in the equation. Do you think that Armenia declaring that it is ready for peace is, forgive me, foolhardy on the part of Armenia when it doesn't take into account that Azerbaijan has demonstrated it really does not want peace? We saw that they have soldiers in territorial grounds of Armenia, and at least at a minimum, Azerbaijan cannot be said to want peace the way Armenia would want peace, the way Artsakh would want peace. So what do you have in mind when you talk about all the other players, keeping in mind the smaller players?
Look, let's first, I will respond to the first part of the question, mentioning with the Turkey and Iran. I think it's, okay, that's why I think what's happening in Iran is very critical and influences the entire situation in this region, which we cannot ignore. And it's clear that Turkey, Azerbaijan, and partially Israel and UK has their own interest what's happening in this region. And we have Russia, their own interest. And the last 200 years, it was been fight between the Ottoman Empire, Persian Empire, British Empire, Russian Empire on this region. I think it's continuous big game, we like to name it. From Azerbaijan and Armenia, of course, is a two countries who just got independence 30 years ago, and finding their own positioning in this region is quite challenging because both countries have their own problems. Armenia, no natural resources, landlocked, and in blockade from two countries in the last 30 years, and many other problems. In Azerbaijan, the other problem is the one family ruling the country 44 years. People don't realize from 104 years when the country was established in 1918 until now, it's 44 years. The country was run by one family, and to keep the country alive and to keep this regime alive, I think the regime decided to have always enemy outside of the own country. That's why this conflict with Armenians, this conflict with Armenian Artsakh, help the Aliyev regime to keep the power inside, keep the unity of the nation. That's why Russia is a very big player. Russia is influenced significantly in this region. And you're right, Russian army is present in Armenia, Russian peacekeeper present in Artsakh. But in the end, we see that Turkey become very serious player here. And after the war of 2020, Turkey basically managed the army in Azerbaijan. That's why it's not so simple like Russia. Whatever Russia wants to do, it will be do it here without asking anyone. And the second, I think we've been so long just depending for somebody else, but we not define ourselves. What is our position? How strong our position? How strong we are committed ourselves for our own independence. That's why this blockade helped having a lot internally to define in the end, say, okay, are we ready for sacrificing ourselves? Are we ready to raise our voice and we will not be part of Azerbaijan? And it doesn't matter what Russia will say. It doesn't matter. By the way, it's very important here. Basically, people said here, we will not become of Azerbaijan. And this is a story. It doesn't matter which big player what's saying to us. We need to hear, if they want to accept that we will be killed by a bigger army or will be pushed out, will be ethnic cleaning, it will be, they need to understand they will carry the duty and responsibility also. It's not going to be only Azerbaijan will be responsible, but they will be responsible also for what will happen with us. But we will not accept just simple following whatever somebody will decide about us, about our future. And this is very important to define your own position with the understanding all the difficulties that you can create for yourself.
And I think that's an excellent point, Mr. Minister, because I think that for far too long there has been an underappreciation of the value of the intangible strength that unity and will can actually provide. And I have to say, the blockade showed something else, I believe, and to get your comments on this. It's also demonstrated Azerbaijan's willingness to ethnically cleanse Armenians. I mean, it is actually showing it and demonstrating it out in the open for everybody to see what it can do or what it wants to do to the Armenians of Artsakh. And I think that this is as this issue gets greater and greater light, it becomes very, very, very difficult for Western countries, especially, to look at this issue and say that any status within Azerbaijan is tolerable. It's a very difficult pill to swallow when the country has shown that it is willing to ethnically cleanse and exterminate the indigenous people. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on something very kind of specific here. We've heard a lot about specific instances of, for example, cutting the gas supply, cutting the electric supply, cutting the internet. other impactful actions that Azerbaijan has taken. And without getting into too much detail in terms of strategic questions, I just want to ask you generally, is there a method to their use of these measures? In other words, are these measures tied to demands? Are they tied to things that they are trying to extract from the Artsakh government, from the Artsakh people? How have you learned over the last 44 days how these measures are being implemented? What is the strategy?
The strategy which Azerbaijan is implemented last 2 years is very simple. It's salami strategy. They cut piece by piece the independence of Artsakh. That's why when I came to Artsakh and I said we are in Sardarabad, I was really, it was not emotionally, I saw it, how slowly but very consistently they cut and came closer to situation with one more step and you will be very close to lose everything. Because Azerbaijan implemented the implementation of the strategy was very clear. They push and they just use the knife and carrot, and basically they try to show, guys, you have a normal life, we'll build the road, we'll do everything possible, but you will have a nice life here. And at the same time, they took the positions, they bombed our army, they squeezed people from living in some places. I think they have a very clear, defined strategy how they want to solve this problem. And basically, I said this in a simple formula. Artsakh said, we understand we are living in a region where we will be neighbors with Azerbaijani people. We'll be side by side, we'll live side by side, but not together. Whereas Aliyev said, we'll have Artsakh without Armenians. This is why it's a two different formula, and they tried to implement this formula very clearly. Publicly, basically declared, we want to have Artsakh, and we don't care if the Armenians were or not. So it's long-term defined and executed strategy of making everything possible that Armenians will left Artsakh.
Mr. Minister, this is a question that is on a lot of Armenians' minds, at least in the diaspora. I know it's on my mind. It's been on my mind. We often have heard as Armenians that our strength is our unity. We always talk about ber հավաքական ուժը. But unfortunately, we all know that since the 2020 war, at least, we seem to be, at least in my opinion, more divided than ever. We have different political views. We have different ideologies about what's the right way to go about the Artsakh people's plight. And my question to you is, as the state minister, as someone who went to Artsakh when a lot of people, saw themselves on the outside looking in, you went on the inside looking out. What is it that you can tell us, Armenians, who have, all of us seem to have the perfect solution, but none of us seem to have solutions that align with others. And consequently, it's either, State Minister Vardanyan should resign, State Minister Vardanyan is a Russian agent, State Minister Vardanyan is the greatest thing. There's all these differing issues, but Azerbaijan, meanwhile, doesn't care about whether I think this way or the Armenian in Armenia thinks another way. They talk about Armenians as being the enemy of Azerbaijan, and they've been doing that for going back 10, 11 years. I personally recall confronting the Consul General of Azerbaijan in Los Angeles about that very issue 10 years ago or so. What's your message to us? What are we doing wrong here?
I think it's a very good example of the difference between democracy and autocracy. in Aliyev, it's one person making all decision, and we made decision how we believe is right for his own family, for his own country. And there's a plus and minuses in our country, in our nation. We all have our own personal opinion, and this is the problem, of course, because all of us have a very strong opinion about everything. But if going more seriously, I think we had, in my view, a couple issues which we need to be honest and speak frank about this. First, we are always looking backwards, not the forward. And I think it's one of the challenges of our Armenian nation. We need to define what is our vision about our future. And this is the challenge, because I believe without a defined clear strategy and vision about the future, you cannot unify people, because just saying I'm a good person, I'm a smart person, I'm a rich person, whatever, come and follow me, it becomes personal. It's not about the vision, it's about the personal relationships. So unfortunately, democracy is a great system, but if you don't have a party, if you don't have a vision, and you don't have programs about what you're trying to do, it's very difficult to build sustainable long-term movements. Second, I will say maybe not very nice things about us. We are very individualistic nation. We believe we can adapt and survive any place in the world. That's why we always have a second plan B. And when you have a plan B, you're not finding from plan A. And I know it's a normal person always has a plan B, because you're a lawyer and you say, okay, if it's not this strategy, this, that. But here, when you're talking about your homeland, you're talking about your country, you need to have what you say is a red line. This is over. I will not go further from plan B or plan C. Will not work if it's destroying my own state, my own country. That's why we have an issue of this plan B. We can go and live any place in the world. We're living in 105 countries. You know, I'm the co-founder of Future of Armenia, and I was shocked to get Armenians sign up to our program from Ghana, from Ethiopia, from New Zealand to Chile. And I said, okay, Armenians everywhere, but we are not benefiting from it. And we don't have a state mentality. Again, look, we can go more about past, but 800 years we didn't have a state, we don't have a bureaucracy, we didn't have a mechanism to really show how the civil society operate independently. It's why we're learning. It's 30 years. It's a quite short period of time for the nation who've been under control of big empires to learn what means to be responsible for your own future, to be responsible for your own country, or your own state, your own nation. So I say it's a learning process that we're paying a very expensive price, but this is the reality.
Yeah, I think that, Mr. Minister, you highlighted something which is very interesting, and that is, in terms of what we've learned about running a state or operating a state, and how the state perhaps even serves the nation. I think the Armenian example is particularly unique in that, because as you explained, Armenians are all over the world because of very tumultuous events that have taken place in our history. And therefore, there is a responsibility, would you agree, that the Armenian state should have for the entire nation, that it's not a state just for its local citizens, but that it has a greater pan-Armenian obligation. That's my first question, but and I'll let you answer that. But before I do, I want to tell you something that I think is very interesting. I've been a student of international law and human rights and the law of self-determination for 3 decades. Something I saw, I think you can count on one hand the number of times it has happened, and that is the mention of an actual individual's name at the UN Security Council. There is something that scares Azerbaijan about you, Mr. Minister. So my second question is, and I think I know the answer, especially after this conversation, but I want to hear it from you. My second question is going to be, what is it, do you think that scares Azerbaijan about you?
I've been privileged to do many projects with my partners and friends, and I have a very close relationship with Vardanyan, who is the founder of Moderna and a very successful venture, innovative entrepreneur who really doing fantastic things. In the last 20 years or more, we've been thinking about how we can really use this competitive advantage that we have, this network of Armenians who've been living many places and really keep the identity of being Armenian, despite, again, maybe not all of them speak Armenian, not all of them been in Armenia. You will not realize from 10 million Armenians or whatever, we don't know the number, because it's not an Armenian name that you define when you're Armenian. It's not what's the percentage of the blood you have. It's very interesting. Armenian by choice, when you're saying, despite I'm from Argentina or I'm from the United States or from Russia, and my mother or my father is not Armenian, I find myself Armenian. So Armenian by choice is very interesting, unique determination we have in our own DNA. We learned how to build this very difficult system when you have a state and network, because today, I don't want to go too long on, but it's a war happening between the resource-based countries and technology countries, between the network and the institutions, and civilizational conflict also happened. So we are unique situation with Armenians can again, first time in history of civilization, like we've been first Christian state, we can become first nation who can find the balance between state and network. It's tough because it's two sides to it, and it's not only obligation of the state leaders to define and propose something to the network. Network also needs to be responsible and also feel our way needs to be not only just sending money, but really feel we're part of the something bigger and less defined by institutional mechanism. So it's a good point about, can we Armenians who really being successful and we've been living in this planet at least 5,000 years and being I know there are 3,500, we can talk about this also, but very long time, much longer than many other nations. Can we again, we become the pioneer of showing how network and state can operate under one umbrella, under one vision? And this is a very good point, I believe, is a time of our competitive advantage, which we need to find a way how we can realize this competitive advantage. But just second question that you asked, I think this is the main point. I think the Aliyev regime realized what the Ruben presence in Azerbaijan territory, how they treated, and for us being in Artsakh, for myself, it's a danger of really bringing his network, bringing his entire Armenian nation to this situation together. To Artsakh is not only for 120,000 people. This my message was from the first day. I believe, and people, Armenians who listen to understand, it's the last place where Armenians have been living thousands of years. And I feel this, you feel difference. I love Armenia, but in Armenia, most of people is refugees or kids or grandkids of refugees. Artsakh is a territory like we lost in Western Armenia, like Sassoon, Mush, where we've been, where we've been living before any empire established. Artsakh as a place which we need to save, not only for Artsakh people, but for entire nation. And this message is strong. This message is strong, and it's coming from me, a person who...
I hope we did not lose power, or the state minister did not lose power.
I think it's a very real possibility, because it looks as if the lights in the background have gone off as well. Garo, but I think that we caught the gist of his last statement there. And for our viewers, by way of a little bit of background regarding that last question I asked, Minister Vardanyan was mentioned by name by the Azerbaijani ambassador at the discussions, the deliberations of the UN Security Council, which is, if not a first, a very rare occurrence in meetings of high states at the United Nations. And it looks like we have lost the minister. Garo, I guess, I think it's probably fitting at this stage, given the nature of our conversation with Mr. Vardanyan, to get your thoughts. And hopefully we'll be able to reconnect in the interim, and if not, hopefully in the future.
I do know, thank you, Karnig. I do know that the minister had meetings at 8 a.m. Stepanakert time, which is right about now. So I don't know if we will have the good fortune of having him rejoin us, but I'll say this.
But Garo, before, it looks like he is coming back, sorry.
Oh, good.
I think we have him.
Sorry. Yeah, I came back, if you can hear me. Yeah, we lost, it's exactly what's happened. We lost electricity and we just switched from the system to diesel. The generator is Wi-Fi is gone. And yeah, anyway, I think
joining us. And really it shows kind of an example of, even in government ministries, the difficulties of actually undertaking normal business operations in the current climate, I have to say.
Minister, I don't know if you had completed your thoughts, but I wanted to share your sentiments that you had once made, you'd made often actually, that Artsakh's existence will also ensure the existence of Armenia. I share that sentiment. Many share that sentiment with you. With that, I'd like to ask you, how much of Artsakh's struggle today for self-determination do you think is supported by the Republic of Armenia and also by the diaspora? And I don't want to, I'm not trying to, set you up to say, well, the Republic of Armenia can do more or they're doing great. It's not that. That's not my intention. But how much? Because that is such a true statement. As Artsakh goes, so goes Armenia, so goes the Armenian nation. That is so true for those of us who have been to Artsakh time and time and time again, and we see not as Armenia being the guarantor of Artsakh's existence, but the other way around. How much do you think is being done? How much more do you think can be done? Not just by the Republic of Armenia, but also by the diaspora, but also again by the Republic of Armenia as well.
You ask a very tough question. You're asking a very tough question because it's very sad for me to say this, but honestly, I felt very sad about the situation when most of Armenians never been in Artsakh. If who lives in Armenia, it's a tragedy for me. But the relationship between Artsakh and Armenia during the last 35 years was, in one hand, a lot of Armenians who live from Armenia give their lives for Artsakh independence. In the first war, and diaspora also, you can see the pictures of Monte and Leon Azdalyan, one from Armenia, other from diaspora, who came here and gave their lives for Artsakh independence. And we always remember, it was 30,000 volunteers in the last war from Armenia was ready to go fight. And we always need to pay respect and tribute to these people. At the same time, like I said, most people never been in Artsakh, and it's some type of ignorance and negativity to each other for different also reasons, political and personal stories. And we, like Aliyev, didn't make enough work for explaining why it's so important Artsakh for Armenia and why it's for Armenian world. And yeah, we're paying price not doing our work properly last 30 years. And where the issue with the indifference become, unfortunately, the behavior of most of the people in Armenia. Of course, part of the reaction after loss in the war, what we had in 2 years ago, partially because they believed in the future, they lost belief in the leaders, and they basically don't want to be anymore involved in political activities. And diaspora also lost the interest to what's happened in Armenian Artsakh for different reasons. I don't want to go in many details because we have no time already. I need to go for next meeting. Unfortunately, I can take only one or two more questions because 8:15 is already will be my next meeting with the government. The elite, the key point, Garo, I would say, reflect about Armenian elite don't understand the responsibility for explaining the nation, including the government officials, because elite is not only who has the money or who have a position in a government. Elite is combined intellectual and financial and political forces which come together and say, we are responsible for our nation, we're responsible for our state, and we are responsible for our second state now, because look what's happened. Now we are in a challenge saying, we have a two-state, one nation. What is the situation about the Artsakh and Armenia? Because before it was very clear, Artsakh is a part of Armenian and right? It was the message which was clearly defined and delivered. And now we say, no, we don't know. And I said, for example, I asked a question which created a lot of challenge in Armenian government officials saying, now we are spurk in Artsakh, we are diaspora. How you treat us if you are not, if you're saying you recognize Azerbaijan territorial integrity, what is the people who live in Artsakh now for you? Is it like any Armenian who live in Georgia or in Russia? Or who we are from relation between the government and in Armenia and people who live in Artsakh? It's tough because we are not prepared to go discuss, debate, but coming into some of the conclusions which needs to be mandatory for the elite to be responsible for their own nation.
I have one more question, if that's okay, Mr. Vardanyan, and I think Garo's got one more, and then we will let you do the affairs of state. My question is, it's clear in our conversation today that there are a lot of important themes that you've discussed and have underlined. And it's clear that, and at least in my impression, is that it's clear that you understand that this is a historical moment for the Armenian nation as a whole. And my question has really two parts. To what extent do you believe that the Artsakh people understand that this is a historical moment, not only for themselves, but for the entire Armenian nation? And secondly, what has to be done to convince and demonstrate to the world that this is truly a historical moment, like a Sardarabad moment, as you've explained before?
Look, I smile because it's I strongly believe it's Artsakh second time get the chance to help the entire Armenian nation to feel what we are Armenian, because like in 1988 it was maybe in my life one of the best moments in my life, and I went to the street being 20 years old, and I saw maybe 200,000 or 300,000 people in the street, unified, and it was unbelievable emotional feeling that you felt like your nation. So I believe Artsakh again will play an important role for bringing back our unity of nation despite all the challenges. Second, the crisis is always good opportunity. The crisis gives us chance to clean up a lot of mess that we collected during this decade to really understand what is good, what is bad, to really define what is the important, what is less important, and be brave and don't be scared to do what you used to do, with your duties to do for your own nation. So I think Artsakh is playing a very important role to help all of us, doesn't matter where we live, to rethink about who we are, why we want to be Armenian, and what we used to be Armenian.
Thank you. Here's my final question, State Minister. Us Armenians, as you've noted quite plainly, are all over the world. I grew up in Beirut. I live in the United States. I'm an American by choice, and I have a great deal of admiration and allegiance to my adopted homeland, the United States of America. But neither I nor Karnig are the hosts or the co-hosts of Heart Talk, which you were a guest on a few days ago. And unlike Heart Talk, which is advancing the agenda of the United Kingdom and its allies, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and advancing the interests of those allies, Israel, and asking you twisted questions, which I watched the interview. My question to you is the following. A lot of Armenians think that the West is the savior and that US is going to come and save the day. Others think Europeans are going to come and save the day. And others yet accuse you of being not too candid with your unconditional support, as they put it, of the Russian peacekeepers in Artsakh. With that question in a background and that commentary, is it fair to say, and I think I know you somewhat, having followed you, that you will accept any international peacekeeping force if that meant the unblocking of Artsakh and the self-determination rights of Artsakh people of Armenian descent, which have been there for millennia, to continue to advance? Is that a fair statement in your opinion?
Because it's the last question, if you allow, I will say a few more words about it, because you asked, I think, very important question, not only my connection with Russia or whatever other theories. Look, by the way, I was treated from other part of my position that I'm the British agent. That's why it's not only, if you follow the internal Armenian politics, you will find that I'm not only Russian agent, but I'm a British agent. And the way Prince Charles, the King Charles, is a friend of Ruben. That's why it's clear that I'm part of the British MI6 or whatever they name it. But I want to come back, I think, because you asked, I think, very critical, very important question for all of us. You know, we've been victims and survival of genocide the last 100 years. And we are, like a nation, under big trauma. The victims always blame somebody else. Victims always try to find who is wrong, who is guilty, and who is obliged to help us. I think we've been so long blaming and demanding from a world to recognize, to punish. And it was fair, by the way, it was a great job done by many generations, and I believe it's recognition of genocide is very important work. But just saying like victims are recognizing the genocide and trying to demand from the other country to help us, it's a wrong attitude. I think, like you said absolutely rightly, for me, today 2,000 more soldiers in Artsakh is a big, important element that I want to keep it. If I can bring to Artsakh 5,000 more peacekeepers from India, no problem. If I can bring other peacekeepers to save Armenians, 30,000 kids are all lives here, I will do it. That's why first we need to be responsible for our own future ourselves. We need to define what, despite maybe we are small, it's only 120,000 people and 10 million Azerbaijani, 80 million Turks. Said, how we can fight against this giants? I say, no, we can fight. We can fight like many other places. We can have historical evidence that it can happen. If you have inside yourself believe what is important for you. This is why first we need to get out on this model of somebody will help us, somebody will, West or Russia will save us. We need to save ourselves, and we need to be smart enough to attract and create the situation will be relevant for the world, relevant for the big players, relevant for the big international organization, really important from point of how we're doing, what we're doing, who we are, and show our own community. I always said, okay, maybe I have only $1, you have $100, but I will bring my entire dollars. Okay, from my side, 100% commitment. It's not 10% of my $1. No. It's just been a small number, but I'm fully committed from my side. I'm showing this commitment, and I'm sure if you show your commitment, doesn't matter how small you are, the big player will come and try to support you. If you only demand and you ask for help, it will never happen. This is why we've been treated again and again. We can blame who was wrong, who was guilty in the First World War when the genocide happened. But in the end, we've been not ready for a fight for our own independence. Okay, and this is, I know it will be not very well received for some of Armenians because they believe strongly it was responsibility of the big players. Of course, they play important role, but in the end, we are defining our future. We are defining our own destiny, and we need to learn about this responsibility to make the decisions. Sometimes wrong, sometimes very painful, sometimes really tough because you need to choose between one bad scenario, other bad scenario, and find what is the most acceptable for the future of your own nation, not about your own personal interest. But this is no other option. That's why I believe people need to learn this lesson. Our future belongs to us, not to somebody else, and our future will be defined by us, but not by somebody else. And our future will be defined how strong we are committed and how strong we will be ready to give everything for our own future, for our own next generation, to continue being Armenian in a world which a lot of challenges, a lot of nations disappeared, lots of countries disappeared, and for the world is nothing. But we've been in this planet, like I said, thousands of years, and being responsible for our own future, we need to be ready to do sometimes very tough and painful decisions, steps, but we don't need to be scared because in the end, this is the way how you found your own future. Because look, when you have a pressure, you have two options. One, to push back or to escape. Last 800 years, we've been very good to escaping, going other places. It's tough here, I will go other places. We say it's enough. We are living in our own land, we are living in our home, and we will not run, we will push back. And pushing back is tough. But I believe this is the only way we can really stay like a nation. Not only we keep the state, but stay like a nation in the 21st century.
Mr. Minister, thank you so much. And quite frankly, I believe that the fear that the neighboring state has of you is really based in what you just said, is that intangible force, that commitment, that vision, and really the reawakening in this present moment, in these very dangerous moments of the Armenian national spirit. And I commend you obviously for your personal sacrifices as well as for your vision as a leader, and really digging in on some of these core concepts that really will shape the collective Armenian nation's future. I'd like to ask you if you'd like to say any final words, Mr. Vardanyan, before I pass it on to Garo, as we usually do for our customary last two words.
Well, I want to say thank you, for everything you're doing. I believe we all have a privilege to be Armenian. I heard a very nice sentence, which I really love it. I met one guy in a village. He left Baku first time in 1989, and now after the Second War, he left Hadrut and came to a new place, and he's has a family, and he building again new house for him to stay with the family in Artsakh. And for me, the privilege to give my life for Artsakh, but bigger privilege to live in Artsakh. And I think it's a big privilege to be Armenian and being with all of you and feel that you're doing something which is important for your nation. And I wish all of us to not be indifferent and feel what we are privileged to know each other and connecting each other with really fantastic power, which can change the world better, not only for Armenians, but the entire world. And let's use this opportunity to, again, show the world what the Armenian nation is, being maybe small by number, but it's really making big difference for not only for ourselves, but for the world. And thank you for what you're doing also. Is all, I think, is important. What you, despite being from Lebanon, from the United States, again, feel all Armenians. And this is important and big privilege.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And Garo, if I can pass it on to you for your final thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Vardanyan, State Minister of Republic of Artsakh, it was our distinct honor and privilege to have this time with you. And you described exactly what a defense lawyer does in a closing argument, discussing the fight or flight syndrome. When a house is on fire, there are two types of people. One type of people run away from the house, leave the house, or run as far away as possible from that fire burning in the house. And another type of people who run into the house. The ones that run into the burning house are the ones that are part of that household, that belong to that home, that belong to that nation. And sir, I want to thank you for running into that burning house post 44-day carnage and enduring 40 plus days of blockade right now, staying put. When the enemy says we want State Minister Vardanyan to resign, that is a compliment, whether they realize it or not. We all have work to do, yes. We Armenians in Artsakh doing the work that they are doing, staying strong, but we Armenians in Armenia, we Armenians in the diaspora, and we non-Armenians who are human rights advocates, we have work to do. Artsakh government continues to do its work. The Republic of Armenia government needs to continue to do its work. And diaspora institutions, whether they are traditional political parties or otherwise, need to do their work. The work for the Armenian nation, running into that burning house, not bickering about what's the right entryway into the house, the front door or the back door or the window. A strong Artsakh requires a strong and sustained effort by all who speak of democracy and human rights and of Armenian heritage and Armenian pride. Let us all redouble our efforts. Let's each do our part and not wait for someone else to come and save the day. Let's each take a step towards that burning house and put out the fire, just like the State Minister has done and continues to do. State Minister, Mr. Vardanyan, thank you for stepping up. Thank you for running into the house. Thank you for staying into the house, inside the house. And we hope, Karnig and I and many others, to see you in that house, in the home, in the Republic of Artsakh in the near future. God bless you.
And I welcome all of you to Artsakh. I hope we'll meet physically in Artsakh very soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.